Okay, so it's my intention that this be very informal. I've done plenty of lecturing this weekend, and so that's not what I intend to do in this session. Just real quickly, and maybe at this point, for some of you, it's probably, you've heard this many times, so I'll be very quick, but the unfortunate reality is that we know that a significant percentage of young people walk away from their faith after high school, maybe 40 to 50%. There's a lot of research on that, but that's kind of a good conservative estimate. I actually assume that once we process data on the other side of the pandemic, that it will have gotten worse than that. There's a lot of reasons why this happens. It's a complicated issue. I don't mean to suggest that age segregation is the only reason why, but it is a major reason, and it's one that historically we haven't thought about very much. And I also think it's kind of an underlying issue that leads to some of the other reasons why this happens. So, age segregation happens in our society. Historically, through most societies in the history of the world, young people have learned to become mature adults by being around mature adults. But we live in a society increasingly where young people are separated from the very relationships that help them grow to maturity. That happens in society. It also happens in the church. And so I'm a youth minister, have been for a long time. A lot of traditional youth ministry practices just play right into this process of age segregation. So I don't want to be a part of that. I want to kind of push back and try to do things in a more biblical way. And when we look at Scripture, what we see over and over again is that there's two groups, the physical family and the faith family, that are given the responsibility of passing faith on to the next generation. And so in the youth ministry that I lead at the Cloverdale Church in Searcy, Arkansas, we are trying to do youth ministry in a way that helps equip physical families, but especially parents, to be the primary disciple makers of their own children, and also that seeks to create meaningful, multiple meaningful relationships between our young people and adult Christians in the church. And research shows that both of these things have positive outcomes in terms of long-term faith. So I took about 4 hours to do that yesterday, but we did it in about 4 minutes just now. So that's kind of the broad 30,000-foot view. We ran out of time yesterday and didn't get to all questions. So if you have questions from yesterday, or if you just have any other questions or comments or whatever, the floor is open. Yes, ma'am.
A couple questions. As you work the transition from being multi-generational to intergenerational, how did you prep the groups? Because we all come with biases of generations, both mature Christians as well as young people. What did you do with each group to kind of ease them into changing your model, and specifically like with young people, if they've been had a negative situation with the adults in their congregation, which was hurtful, how did you overcome that? Also, could you talk about your cell groups and a little bit how you put people together in cell groups and how long a leader stayed with their cell group?
Yeah.
And how you incorporate maybe young adults in your model also.
Great questions. So you were clearly here yesterday, so that's good. So I'll take them one at a time. So first, she asked a question about how do you transition from multi-generational to intergenerational. So let me talk just for a moment about those two words, because a lot of times we kind of assume that they're the same. Multi-generational really means multiple generations are present together. Intergenerational is multiple generations are present together and interacting, mutually engaged. And I illustrated this yesterday by talking about and you have a big family gathering for Thanksgiving, and when you have too many people and you've got lots of kids, what do? Well, you tend to have an adult table and a kid table, right? And if you do this at Thanksgiving, I'm not saying you're a terrible person, okay? At all. But like 2 different tables, but also 2 different experiences. So like there's kind of polite adult conversation on the nice china with the fancy silverware. You pass food carefully. Other table, like not really super polite conversation necessarily. Eating on paper plates. Instead of passing food, you're throwing food, right? So 2 different experiences. And so that's kind of multi-generational. And sometimes in the church, we settle for multi-generational and we think that we're doing all that we should. But really, we want more than just having people present. We want them to be engaged with one another. So that's intergenerational. So that's kind of the background to the first question. So how do we go from multi-generational to intergenerational? And that is a great question, and I'm not going to pretend that it's not challenging. One thing that we've done, this is actually really timely. I'm glad that I'm here now and not like a month ago. But one thing that we've done at Cloverdale, we've been going through this long process of figuring out like what is God calling us to do in our location? What is God's mission for us look like here? Because we're in a very special sort of place. I mean, we have approximately 200 to 300 college students because we're right in the shadow of Harding University. And as you can imagine, that affects the way that you do ministry when you're a church of 400 with 200 to 300 college students. It's been hard for us to kind of wrap our minds around the last few years that we've been there. So we've got a special context, and what does it look like for us? And so we kind of got this new statement that we released, and part of that statement is that we seek to be an intergenerational church. So one thing that we've done for the last 6 weeks, we just finished up like 2 weeks ago. We had this new statement that we had released, and there were 6 different parts of it. Intergenerational was one part of it. So what we did is we took 6 weeks, and we had Bible classes, and we had 6 different adult Bible classes. And I say adult, it was actually 7th grade and up. So all of our students were involved in these, all of our college students were involved in these, all of our adults were involved in these, and they were split up kind of randomly. But what happened was I taught on intergenerational stuff with one of our elders for 6 weeks in a row. And we just rotated through these different age groups. And we talked about a lot of the stuff that I've shared this weekend, specifically on the intergenerational faith family side of things. But also, we talked about generational differences. And we talked about how sometimes these are stereotypes that are not super helpful and actually kind of erect barriers within the church. We talk about this a lot of time in society. I think I said yesterday, I was joking, technically I'm what they call a geriatric millennial, which means like I'm as old as you can be and still technically be like in the millennial generation. But I've got a brother who's a Gen X guy and a sister who I guess is also Gen X because she's older than I am. And we weren't raised in my parents are baby boomers, but we weren't raised in the family like, oh, well, okay, you're a millennial, so I'm going to talk to you this way, and you're Gen X, so I'm going to... We didn't do that. We were just a family. And I think that family idea really is helpful as well. When we use worldly categories of generational stereotypes, and I'm not saying there's nothing helpful from that, there are, but when we allow worldly categories to infiltrate the church, it really can erect barriers that are not super helpful, as opposed to if we spend a lot of time just trying to interact and engage, we can see like, oh, there are some things that are different about us, but also there are strengths from different generations that we can learn from. There are some really good things about millennials, stereotypically, but if I'm only around millennials, we are worthless because we've got some blind spots. We've got some real weaknesses. We need to be around other people that can kind of fill in our gaps and our holes, and that's true of every generation. And so one thing that we try to do, that was a rambling response, one thing that we try to do is just kind of head on. I mean, week after week, we've attempted to discuss this in a Bible class setting with all of our people to where at least they know this is where we want to go, this is why, here are some potential problems with that. And then when we're moving forward and maybe we get some pushback, we can fall back to, remember, we want to be intergenerational. This is what it looks like. And yeah, there might be some growing pains, but there's also some strengths that come from it. And then another thing I would say is, you mentioned cell groups, and cell groups would also be part of what I would respond to that. So what we do in our youth ministry on Wednesday nights, our youth group is... we probably have about 30 students regularly attending in this current mostly post-pandemic, but not entirely post-pandemic environment. We have about 30 students that attend, and then we also have about 15 adults who are cell group leaders. And so we all meet together, and we have a short lesson that I usually give, which, I mean, I say short, like 10 or 12 minutes, and then we split into these groups. And so our cell group, and by the way, there's a lot of research on cell groups or small groups or whatever you want to call them, and how to split them up. What we do is we have them boy, girl, roughly by age. So like we've got like a 7th, we have more girls than guys in our youth groups. We have 3 girls groups, 7th through 9th, 10th, and 11th and 12th, and we have a 7th through 9th and a 10th through 12th guys group. And each of those groups have, 6 to 10 students in them, and then they have 3 adult cell group leaders. And what they do is, we have a 10 or 12 minute lesson, then they spend 40 to 50 minutes with their groups, and they have discussion questions that I've given them from the lesson, so they're having spiritual conversations about the content that we just shared, but also they're just talking about their lives. It's just an environment and a space for the adults to get to know the students and vice versa. And so they're praying together, they're talking about what's going on, and then also they plan to see each other outside of that space. So they might have like little events, like you've done stuff before where it's like you bake cookies with your group, and why are you laughing? Isn't that a thing? No, that's not a thing. Okay. You know, movie night? Pool party, movie night. Were there no cookies involved?
There was going to be one, but
Okay, so scratch the cookies. You could bake cookies, but apparently that didn't happen. Some of the groups have had like bowling nights, or they've gotten together to play Frisbee, or just all sorts of stuff, but small group sort of activities that they'll plan. Also, ideally, our cell group leaders, they're not just there for an hour a week. They're also, since they know the students, they want to be involved in the students' lives, so they're also going to their football games or their volleyball games, their band concerts, things like that. They know when they've got a big test coming up that they're worried about, so they can text them and say, hey, I was praying for your test today. How did it go? They know when their birthdays are, things like that. And so over time, these become really close relationships. And again, it's not like this is a cure-all that fixes every problem, but just we talked about the cumulative effect of some of the age segregation practices. Well, now turn that on its head and think about the cumulative effect of something like this, where week after week, so at the end of a year, maybe we usually take a break for summer, so maybe we've had 40 weeks where we're with these same adults, and we're having these spiritual conversations week after week, and we're praying with one another week after week, and we're seeing each other outside of this time. We do that week after week, year after year. The cumulative effect of that, the potential, I think, is really great. As far as how long do we get cell group leaders to serve, I ask for a 1-year commitment. And then I give them that we take a break for the summer, and then I come back to them and I say, hey, I'm going to ask you late in the summer what you think about next year. So pray about it, take a break. And I've done this, I only did this a couple of years at my previous congregation before we moved, and then we only started it in January of this year at Cloverdale. And so my general experience has been everyone re-ups. They want to come back and do it again. And so,
do they do the same group? Or?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and there's debates in like you read about it, like should it be the same person over and over or not? And we haven't fully decided, but generally speaking, they do the same people at least for a while, like for a few years would be the goal. And like sometimes things have to change. So one of my cell group leaders right now of the 11th and 12th grade girls, her daughter's in 10th grade. So next year she'll be in 11th grade. Well, we want there to be good relationships between parents and students, but cell groups are not that. And so she's going to have to move next year just because her own daughter will be in that group. And we want relationships between parents and children to be really strong, but we also want them to have other relationships as well. And so that's what we're trying to do with cell groups. So sometimes things happen where we move people around, but in general, we would like, you're more willing to share the difficult things in your life with people that you know well. So we want to keep these relationships going as long as possible. So that's kind of how we do cell groups. You asked, about young adults. So we got lots of young adults because we've got college students everywhere. And so one thing that we also try to do is incorporate some college students into our cell groups. And so we've got 5 cell groups. Each one has 3 leaders, and we've got 7, I think, college student or college age. A couple of them are not in college, but they're that age, who are serving as cell group leaders. And so specifically with them, I mean, these are people in the age category that we're really concerned about, right? Who tend to walk away from faith. So we're trying to give them meaningful discipleship opportunities right now. And so we don't have cell group leader teams made up exclusively of college students, but like Caroline has 2 college students with her. And so she's working on trying to disciple the people under her, the college students under her, who are in turn working with those students. And so it's like, it's kind of like 3 generations almost. And so we'll try to do that with our cell groups. We try to have a college student, at least one, plugged into each cell group, and they're hopefully learning from those who are older and kind of, being mentored in that process while at the same time mentoring those younger than them. Does that make sense? I talked a lot. Did I kind of address your questions?
Yeah. How about with the teens? How do you prepare them to transition to how to have those relationships?
Yeah. So one thing I try to do is I just try to be pretty upfront with our teens of, like, when I moved there, the day of my tryout, whatever it was, like, this is what I believe, this is what we're going to do. And like, I remember I had a girl who was like, I don't always love being around my parents and other adults at youth stuff. It's more fun to, be on our own. And I said, well, I hear you, and I respect that that's your opinion. As much as I value your preferences, I'm much more concerned about your long-term spiritual well-being. And so if I come here, this is the way we're going to do it. And I got the job, but they very much knew what I was about when I came. And so one thing I try to do is I just try to be upfront with students about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And so they might not always love it, but they understand why. And having said that, cell groups are like the favorite thing of our students. They love it because students are humans, and as humans, what we really like is to spend time around people who show that they care about us. Did you want to say something to that? Yeah.
In my mind's eye, this is the way I could see it. I could see that I could teach some of these young people eating and knitting or something, and in turn they would come and help me with my iPad.
Yeah. Right.
In my mind, it would be, I think that would give a teen something exciting that they could do and teach and be helpful and feel self-worth.
Right.
That's
Yeah, it's not, and that's an important point. Like, this is not just a one-sided thing, like where students are these helpless individuals that we have to, share all of our expertise with. We do want to do that. We do want to mentor them. But like, we all have things to offer and things to add. As I get older, I am now, I don't know why I looked at my watch. I know how old I am. As I get older, I'm older now than I was 10 minutes ago. As I get older, new technology is increasingly hard for me to use. And so one of the advantages of being a youth minister is I will frequently say, hey, come here. I don't know how to do this on my phone. And they'll come and do that. And they kind of love that because they kind of like, you old guy, you don't know anything. But like, there is this sense in which, I spend a lot of my time teaching them, and then they're able to teach me something. But that's how relationships are, right? They're not just one-sided. They're mutual. And I think that's a really good point. So I do think that it's good to prepare students by just saying, like, hey, this is what we're going to do, and this is why we do it. But also, like, just give it a chance. And overwhelmingly, my experience has been that students really love it. Bob had his hand up. Did you want to say something specifically to?
Yeah, it's about the cell groups. Like, you're worried about how teens are going to respond to it. Overwhelmingly, they love it. And one of the reasons they love it is because when you go off with your cell group on your own, it's a small group of people and a smaller group that you have more comfortable with talking. And we ask them questions, but they get to do the majority of the talking.
over time, our cell group leaders get to where they know the students better than I do, at least their students. And so at first, as a youth minister, when I started noticing this happening, like I felt bad, like I was failing in some sense, like they know more about these kids than I do. And then I thought, wait a second, that's the entire point of this. That's what we're trying to do, because it is physically impossible for me to intimately know 40 young people. Like the human brain is not designed to cultivate that many close relationships. Like you can't do it. And furthermore, even if I could, it's not a biblical model. It's not what we're looking for, because like what happens if I get hit by a bus or I move somewhere else? It's like that one mentor, that one link is gone. Instead, we want a bunch of people involved. I tell our people, our cell group leaders, like they're like mini youth ministers. Like I'm the one that gets paid, sorry, but you guys are really helping me out, because we've got this whole team of mini youth ministers. Okay, sorry, Bob.
So anyway, to clarify, your Wednesday night cell groups are age-based and gender-based.
Yes, sir.
And so it's been 5 or 6 years ago. A very good friend of mine was attending a very large group of people, and their youth ministry exploded with growth. And they attributed, number one, to the fact they did this very similar to what you talked about, but they went to gender-based.
Yeah, and so I mean that's been successful for us. It's not always. I'm trying to think. When we first did this, we actually had one group, and this was at my previous congregation, and I think it was because of just numbers. So we had one group that was a guy and girl. It was like a middle school group. It was guys and girls, because maybe we had like 2 boys and a bunch of girls, or vice versa. I don't remember. And instead of having people like Caroline, who like I'm not a cell group leader, she is, and she's with 2 other college girls. Instead of doing it that way, we had 2 couples who were the cell group leaders for them. So that's possible. It can be done. A good thing about cell groups, it becomes a good way for students to invite their friends, because it's a space that they feel so welcome and they have so much fun that they invite friends. So that works out well. It doesn't work out quite as well when they want to invite boyfriends or girlfriends, because they're like, hey, can they go to my cell group? And I'm like, no. Like, no, they can't. Like, I'm sorry, you just can't do that because it's a girls group. And so that's one potential barrier, but you know, I mean, over time, we have other opportunities for kids to come, and it's like, if they can come and get comfortable, then they can join their own cell group, and that's okay too. So that's, I'm not saying it's a perfect model, but we found that the gender-based thing works best. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, again, I want to clarify that I think that from the biblical perspective, you know, women teaching younger women, and it's a matter of the, you know, when Pam and I, we have a very close relationship with our kids, but the happiest day of my life was when I dropped my oldest son off at college. I mean, I drove all the way across Kansas from local Christian. I mean, I was just, I haven't been happier here. And when we dropped our daughter off at Washington State University, I bawled all the way home, and Pam couldn't have been any happier. I think that's a natural part of the process, is to have other Christian living, you know, interaction. I mean, that's, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
Luke, as far as you said, you know, your kids leave and they go everywhere, and obviously ours has, but I feel like I've made my commitment to the kids, now it's those grandkids. So outside, and the grandkids don't live anywhere near here, outside of praying for those grandchildren and getting together when you do, maybe at Christmas, maybe at once in the summer, how else can we foster that growth, that Christian attitude, character, instilling in those children? Do you have any ideas for how we can reach them outside of being physically together or praying?
Yeah, that's great. And I don't want to like, praying's super important, obviously, right? So we want to do that for sure. One thing I'll mention, Matt, do you have the book Sticky Faith? Do you have that? Okay, so Sticky Faith, and especially the Sticky Faith Guide for Your Family, has a special chapter specifically on grandparents and how you can help build sticky faith within your grandkids. So there's some good ideas there, and I can't remember certainly all of them. But one thing that's helpful in this day and age, and a lot of us have been kind of forced to get used to it because of the reality of the pandemic, is even if we're physically removed, we can actually, through phones and our computers, we can Zoom and we can FaceTime and do things like this. And so even like, it will obviously depend on if your grandkids are being raised in Christian homes or not, like how much will their parents be in favor of this, but like there's nothing preventing you technologically speaking from, hey, I'm gonna read this Bible story to my 3-year-old over Zoom, you know, or whatever the case may be. And we had, when in the early days of the pandemic, we would have that, like my parents or Caroline's parents would sometimes Zoom in and want to read a story, and my son would take the phone and, you know, not understand how it was working exactly. But there are opportunities where we can do that, and it's like we can pray with them, and we can talk about their day, and we can do the same sorts of things, like, and obviously it depends on if your grandkids are 3 or 16. That makes a difference as well. But I would just say, like, a lot of the things that we would like to do if they were present, technology has good sides and bad sides, but like one thing, it does bridge these geographical distances and gives us opportunity to have some of those conversations. So I think, yeah.
Let's get back to your subgroups again. So
Okay.
how do you decide when the timing is that you need to, like, what's the size of a subgroup that's too big?
Yeah, so I feel like I keep saying this, but the research is divided on this. Like, you can read different things. We like, and it also depends on how regular your kids are. So we might have some cell group rosters that have 12 students on them, which I would say is too many. But I know that most of them are not, like, I know that these 4 are not going to come regularly. And so I think a sweet spot, you might have a better idea than me. I would say a sweet spot is about 6 committed people. You know, give or take. You start getting too much less than that because you want multiple adults in there, and you don't want your adults to outnumber your students. Like a certain night that a couple people are sick or not there, and you have 3 adults and 2 students, like that feels kind of weird. So, you know, like 5 to 7, 6 to 8, somewhere in there I think is the sweet spot. You get too many, and it's not a small space, and it gets harder to share. You get too few, and it's an interrogation. You know, if there's just like 3 adults and 2 kids, and it's like, well, how's your week been? You know, so it's, Caroline's group has about 7 or 8 that are regularly there. Is that okay?
It's kind of actually girls, surprise, they like to talk a lot. And so sometimes having 9 of them there makes it hard for us to fit everything in one evening time. So I agree that 6 to 8 is a good number, but you know, that just really depends on it.
Yeah, we have to make decisions based on just, so like, do you want it to be split by age? Well, what if you have, I'm just throwing out numbers, what if you have 8 8th grade girls and 1 9th grade girl? What do you do? I mean, and then like, you know, 8 10th grade girls. And we actually have something kind of similar to that this year. We have, so it's like, do you split a grade in half? Do you know, so you just have to make those decisions. And I guess what I would say is there's not really hard and fast rules. You're just trying to create a place where they feel comfortable sharing what's going on in their lives. And again, Caroline, she's got the middle school girls, and so she comes fairly regularly confessing to me, we didn't get to the discussion questions tonight because the girls just talked the whole time. And that's okay. Like, and what I say to her is like, okay, well, you know, next week maybe start with the discussion questions. It's okay if you don't actually get to the discussion questions because they're sharing their lives with you. That's okay. If that's all that ever happens and like we never get to this, that's not great. So let's kind of tweak that. But really, the discussion is just, it's a platform for getting to know your students that you're working with and trying to develop those relationships. Because what we're trying to do is to build those ties. Yes, sir.
So, then the cell groups and their kids and then leaders, I assume this is a confidential space. So you don't want, you're not asking, so what happens when that confidentiality is breached?
So, yeah, so we start every year with there's like a covenant form that the cell group leaders go through with their students, and everyone signs it. And basically it says, hey, this is a protected space, you're safe here. But because we care about you, there's some things that we're not going to keep private. So like if they're sharing with you like drug abuse or if they've been abused by someone or if they're engaged in like risky behaviors, like, hey, we've got to, we prioritize parents, and it's like we've got to share this. But even then, it would be the sort of thing where we're not going behind students' backs, but we're saying, I'm so glad that you shared this with me. This is really concerning, and your parents have to know this. So how can we share this with them? To where you're not going behind their backs, you're letting them know this is stuff that's got to be shared. And up front, when you talk about the confidentiality, it's not, we're not priests. It's not like confession where everything is. We are in our cell groups still recognizing parents as the primary spiritual influences of their kids, and so there's stuff that they need to know. But if a student in frustration is like, my mom's driving me crazy, she doesn't understand anything, Caroline's not immediately going to the mom being like, did you hear what she said? So it is a safe space for talking about stuff and venting, but serious issues we do share. And Caroline pretty regularly will say stuff to me like, I'm not supposed to say this to you. Like, we're having this discussion, and you should just know that there's something, this is going on, but like, I can't tell you who. But then also there's been times where it's like, here's a significant issue that you should be aware of. And so it's a little bit tricky, but up front, students are made known. This is a confidential space, but there are limits to that confidentiality.
They know they're not supposed to share about other people. Like, we're all being confidential.
Yeah.
So that, we don't have to gossip going on outside of it. And we've never had a problem. Like, it's never come up like, oh, someone just said what I said. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but
Yeah.
they sign their name, they're into it, and they put it on.
It's an expectation up front. And I would assume that in cell group gatherings where something really rough is shared, or, that it would be natural for cell group leaders to remind, like, remember, what we say here stays here, sort of thing. Yes, ma'am.
Well, our model is life groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
You probably know about that and heard about that. So your cell groups are quite different than what our life groups are. Our life groups are family-based or whatever, and we meet generally on Sundays. And are you talking about your cell groups?
Yeah.
Usually on Wednesdays?
Yeah, so we have,
Can you kind of explain that difference?
yeah.
When you say cell group, and then I'm thinking,
Yeah.
relationship of our life
So your life groups are our small groups. It's so confusing, I know. So we have small groups on Sunday nights, and so those are intergenerational, and they meet. They're basically Bible study times. Some of them are meal times. Some of them are. So ours we host at our place, and there's a bunch of college students, and then 3 or 4 families that are part of that as well. And so that's a lot of discussion. That's larger, and we've got a lot of little kids, so it's kind of chaotic. So there's not. I mean, there is significant discussion that goes on. But it's a little bit of a different thing. So then we have cell groups, and so that's kind of like if you just think of replacing Wednesday night Bible class, and that's not for the whole church, that's for our youth ministry. So that's what that is. We also have, to make it even more confusing, we have life groups, and again, we have 200 to 300 college students. So life groups are specifically for our college students, and that is those students can sign up to be a part of a group that will be led by an adult from Cloverdale, and it's the same sort of thing. Like that model is very similar to cell groups, but that's directed for college students. So that's a way that we're trying to reach out and disciple college students, give them a place to connect intergenerationally as well. So it's not just our youth ministry that's trying to do this, we're trying to do it with our college students as well. Which again is challenging because I've got 40 students. Philip, our college minister, is trying to deal with 200, which is overwhelming. So we've got life groups, small groups, cell groups. If that's confusing to you, it's confusing to people at Cloverdale as well. So we're doing the best we can to make that clear. But they're all about connection, right? They're all about connection, and they're all about intergenerational connection, just different ways of going about doing that.
So if we did cell groups here, our teens are a smaller group. Would you just try to do like 2 adults and maybe 4 kids because we don't have as big of a gathering on Wednesday?
Yeah. Yeah, you could do that. I do think it's helpful to have more than one cell group leader because someone's going to not be able to come. And so it's always nice to have a backup. It's also nice just to not, it can feel like a significant burden. Like, I am the lifeline to these students. And you don't want it to be a burden. You want it to be a blessing and a ministry for sure. But if there's a second person, it's kind of like you're tag teaming, and you're going to naturally connect better with some students than others. And so maybe you can be like, hey, I'm struggling to reach so-and-so. Like, why don't you give it a shot? So I do like the idea of having a partner at least. But, having 4 students instead of 6 or 8, like, that's fine. I mean, the goal is you just want them to be small. And maybe it's a matter of, we're just not going to have a whole bunch of groups, and that's okay too. And then, in time, if it grows, you might have to add another group. We're not settled on 5 groups. I mean, as youth group numbers, just demographics grow and swell or shrink, I mean, you just have to adjust. But the important thing is multiple adults and a manageable number of students, and whatever that looks like in terms of number of kids and groups, I think is fine. Yeah.
I would also say, you're saying about how with cell groups, like we just always grow. So you would end up having more groups now because they're going to talk about it, they're like, it's really fun to come, and it does help with our connect. Another thing is we talk about lead small. If they're actually going to do this, like it's a really good resource.
Yeah, there's a book called Lead Small, and I can't think of it might be by Joyner and Ivy. I'm confident that you can find it if you Google it, Lead Small, and it's also like creating a lead small culture. Are you trying to look it up on your phone? And so it really breaks us down with like key things that you're trying to, like principles that you're trying to build into your cell groups. Like, so for example, one of them is I wasn't prepared to talk about this. One of them was like create a safe space. And so that's very much like what we were talking about with confidentiality. It's a safe space. You can show up, you can be yourself, you can talk about stuff. So that's one of them. Another one is partner with parents. We're not trying to compete with parents. So it's important that cell group leaders actually get to know the parents of their kids. Not to where you can share all the secrets, but I mean where you can say things like, you know what, like, Emily is such a wonderful student. Like, it's such a blessing for me to get to know her. I'm blown away by some of her comments sometimes. And parents love to hear that stuff. So partnering with the parents is another value, but it really breaks down what are things that you're trying to accomplish in those. Is that what it's called? Lead Small. Who's it by? What? Reggie Joyner and Tom Shefchunas. Yeah, just type that in, you'll find it. Lead Small. Yes, sir.
Did you have more of your books in somebody else's line?
At Scott's house, I do. Unfortunately, I didn't bring them. They're on Amazon. You can. My book's on Amazon too. If you want a book, let me know, and I'll leave one for Scott. They're like $12 on Amazon or $10 if you buy them from me. So. But yeah, Lead Smalls are good, and then there's another companion book that I think is called Creating a Lead Small Culture. Very similar. They're quick reads. What time does class end? All right. Well, hey, really appreciate your questions and comments. It's been really good and fun. I hope that some of what I've said has been helpful to you. And again, we really enjoyed our time with you this weekend, and are just so thankful for the invitation.